Greetings in the mighty name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I Jah Rastafari, and I Divine Mother Empress Menem. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in I sight, O Jah. Greetings ones and ones. Thanks for the time, and thanks for taking the time to give give ear to I word sound. Now, this word sound here is in particular to address an intellectual juggernaut named Thomas Sowell, or Thomas Sowell, author of over about 45 books, born June 12, 1930. Currently I'm about 92-year-old. The man resume, intellectual resume, really huge, like me say, juggernaut style, you know. But anyway, I come across him again on the YouTube space, and I him word sound. I don't like him word sound, so I check him out. And I decide to counter him word sound through the lens of Rastafari. Because as usual, it's always about Rastafari and the noise. You know? So, this is I. The danger of Mr. Sowell is that he is enshrined and sanctified within the hallmark of Harvard academia. This academic elitism gives access and qualification to become a social influencer upon the malleable and impressionable minds of the African diaspora, which most of them don't know their story before and after slavery, by him becoming an African American misleader. He is a member of the Hoover Institute, established by Herbert Hoover in 1919. It is a think tank where scholastic masters in their field of expertise gather to ensure the continued existence of white supremacy through psychological, social, political, and economical endeavors. Applying scientific principle of thought to action, creating policies of governance in Western societies during peacetime and war. Their application may vary, but the end result is the same, upholding the way of life of white dominance / white supremacy. Thomas Sowell, being a part of the Hoover Institute, gives clarity to his counter-narratives. His objective is to safeguard and protect the American way, which is the system of white supremacy, masked behind democratic principles. According to Google, conservatism is a cultural, social, and political philosophy that seeks to promote and to preserve traditional institutional practices and values. A conservative is one who promotes and defends the established institution of America for white supremacy. Mr. Sowell is a proclaimed conservative, which means he is the modern evolution of a house nigger. The definition of a house nigger is blacks who protect their master's interests. They live their whole life striving to be proper European in black skin, aka black conservative, refusing to identify as African, preferring to be called an American, Jamaican, Caribbean, South American, etc., etc. In short, a slave mindset, identifying with land they were domiciled to, in the same breath trying to disconnect from the black continent, so-called Africa, place of their origin. Thomas Sowell exemplified this through his slanted factual presentation in facts they never mentioned in school, minimizing European involvement in slavery by laying the bulk of slavery at the feet of Africans. Now, let us listen to his word sound.
The instrumental use of the history of slavery today also underlies the claim that slavery grew out of racism. For most of its long history, which includes most of the history of the human race, slavery was largely not the enslavement of racially different people, for the simple reason that only in recent centuries has either the technology or the wealth existed to go to another continent to get slaves and transport them en masse across an ocean. People were enslaved because they were vulnerable, not because of how they looked. The peoples of the Balkans were enslaved by fellow Europeans, as well as by the peoples of the Middle East, for at least 6 centuries before the first African was brought to the Western Hemisphere. Before the modern era, by and large, Europeans enslaved other Europeans, Asians enslaved other Asians, Africans enslaved other Africans, and the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere enslaved other indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere. Slavery was not based on race, much less on theories about race. Only relatively late in history did enslavement across racial lines occur on such a scale as to promote an ideology of racism that outlasted the institution of slavery itself. Wherever a separate people were enslaved, they were disdained or despised, whether they were different by country, religion, caste, race, or tribe. In East Africa, the Maasai were feared slave raiders, and other African tribes, either alone or in conjunction with Arabs, enslaved their more vulnerable neighbors. As late as 1891, it was reported that Manyuema slavers had demoralized surrounding tribes, destroying crops, and famine reigned everywhere. Even in the early 20th century, Abyssinians were still raiding other Africans and carrying off slaves. It was 1922 before the British had gained sufficient control in Tanganyika to stamp out slavery there. Arabs were the leading slave raiders in East Africa, ranging over an area larger than all of Europe. The total number of slaves exported from East Africa during the 19th century has been estimated to be at least 2 million. The form in which the story of slavery has reached most people today has been along the lines of the best-selling book and widely watched television miniseries Roots by Alex Haley. Challenged on the historical accuracy of Roots, Haley said, "I tried to give my people a myth to live by. This instrumental use of history, or purported history, is open to the same objections as other instrumental myth-making. Despite the impression created by Roots, during the era of the massive slave trade from West Africa, a white man was more likely to catch malaria in Africa than to catch slaves himself. The average life expectancy of a white man in the interior of sub-Saharan Africa at that time was less than 1 year. By and large, men from Europe or the Western Hemisphere came to the coasts of Africa, bought their slaves, and left as soon as possible. Even so, the death rates among the white crews of the ships carrying slaves to the Western Hemisphere were as high as the death rates among the slaves themselves. It was only much later, after quinine and other medical measures enabled Europeans to survive where there were tropical diseases, was it possible for them to invade Africa in force and establish empires there. But by then, the Atlantic slave trade had already been ended. During the era of that trade, Africa was largely ruled by Africans, who established the conditions under which slave sales took place. The crew of a slave ship was in no position to defy African rulers and their armies by going out across the land and capturing people willy-nilly. The stronger African peoples captured and enslaved the weaker peoples.
Enough of this crap, yeah. Now, beyond Mr. Sowell counter-narrative and minimization of European participation in slavery, his rationale fails to contextualize slavery. Yes, Africans participated in slavery, but how? From their understanding of what slavery is, let us gather insight from the biblical story of Joseph presented in Genesis 37 to 50 for a deeper understanding of the African construct of slavery. Alright. In the Bible, them tell you about Joseph when him bad mind brother them sell him into slavery and him end up in Egypt. Egypt is North Africa. When him get in Egypt, him end up rise up within the court of the Pharaoh, becoming a high-ranking influencer to the point where him famine and him end up rescuing him same bad mind brother them and the rest of the family and give them land. Now, the reason for I and I bringing up Joseph is to show the African construct of slavery. Because in the African construct of slavery, a slave, which Joseph was, could rise up to become an influencer in the court, a rulership, a leadership, to the point where him can make important decisions. Not so for the diaspora and the white man born of slavery. The white man born of slavery, a slave is a slave until the day you die. Your pitney them born or your kids born, they are also slaves. You are reduced to nothing but an animal. No, that is the African construct of slavery. No. Let's continue with the reading. White man could not go into the interior of Africa according to Mr. Sowell, who was Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba, 1583-1663, fighting for over 40 years inside Angola. Guess the Portuguese could not access the interior of Africa, so the Queen was fighting Portuguese ghost. What about King Leopold II of Portugal, 1865 to 1909? He was the sole owner of Congo Free State. Let me repeat this. A white man is the sole owner of the Congo Free State, who is responsible for murdering over 10 million Congolese. 10 million Congolese, this Leopold, this King Leopold of Portugal, responsible for murder. 10 million. Plus mutilation, cutting off hands if they fail to meet their work quota for the day. Was not this interior Africa, Congo, specifically, Mr. Sowell? Mr. Sowell? No, this is just Europeans staying on the coast, collecting their slave cargo, presented to them by Africans, then sailing off into the sunset. This is what Mr. Sowell wants us to believe, but I and I know better. Alex Haley allegedly saying, I try to give my people a myth to live by. Guess this means the estimated 12 million slaves that came to the diaspora and the atrocities meted out to them is a myth. It don't matter how ancient slavery is and how many different nations practice slavery. European practice a unique brand of slavery against the diaspora, turning human beings, like I mentioned already, into animals, called chattel slavery. This was a painful reality experienced by I and I. Slavery is not a myth, Mr. Sowell. Slavery was not based on race according to Mr. Sowell. Yet there was Jim Crow segregation, black code, laws designed to impede the progress of freedmen and punish them if they socialize with slaves in the antebellum South, in America. Redlining, same place in America there too, is laws created specifically to restrict blacks in certain areas called ghettos or urban centers. It is also restriction of banks' loans for housing and land. If granted, these loans are at a higher interest rate than whites. Black Reality 101, Mr. Sowell. Buck breaking sodomy and slave breeding farms are specifically reserved and intended for black slaves only. Guess it is all a myth according to Mr. Sowell, or is it Alex Haley's myth? So the point for all of this so far is to counter Mr. Sowell. Cause anyway, guess history lied about European wickedness then and now. Ancient African so-called black people did experience slavery and the vestiges of slavery. Now, do you understand why I label Mr. Thomas Sowell an intellectual black modern day house nigger traitor? This is what Rastafari is about, to counter the narratives of the likes of Mr. Sowell with knowledge of self. Rastafari is I think tank for the sole purpose of promoting and safeguarding the Ankh Nation Rastafari family in the diaspora and the continent, ensuring continuity and one accord. Mr. Sowell being a part of the Hoover think tank is no coincidence to I. The name Hoover reminds I of Mr. COINTELPRO himself, J. Edgar Hoover. COINTELPRO stands for Counterintelligence Program, instituted by the said infamous J. Edgar Hoover, the man who rose to prominence by destroying Marcus Garvey, undermined Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X's leadership to their death. He starts with ensuring there will be no black messiah. He dedicated his life in destroying most black organizations displaying revolutionary ideologies like the Black Panther Party. In retrospect, does Mr. Sowell sound like a COINTELPRO operative? When I reference Mr. Sowell as a black intellectual traitor working for the system of white supremacy, it's not without merit. He is worse than those Africans who ignorantly participated in slavery, from their understanding of what slavery represents to them tribally. Not the white man brand of chattel slavery. Maybe he is worse than a house nigger who betrays the struggle for their survival while protecting their privileged interests. Mr. Sowell is consciously trying to intellectualize away chattel slavery, broad-brushing slavery without contextualizing it. He knows presenting his misleading facts will elicit negative vibration from certain sectors within the diaspora who is ignorant to the full scope of slavery. This in turn will potentially impact the reparation argument while continuing the divisive negative sentiments between diaspora and continental Africans. The way he sets about highlighting the African participation and minimizing the European participation, this is his endgame, trying to nullify the reparation argument. There's no excuse for the likes of Mr. Sowell. Seems like the ingestion of too much white milk has calcified away his mind from the collective blackness. Then again, he is not black, he is an American. Minds like Mr. Sowell, you will hear with the narrative of I don't see color. Stop using slavery as a crutch or excuse. I was born black and poor. Look at how successful I am now. We have come a long way and made tremendous strides. Stop being resentful, pondering to victimology, race hustle. In short, stop crying about slavery, looking for handouts, and get over it. They will say all of this while pretending they don't see the ongoing evolution of white supremacy, continued destruction of black family. Why? Because of their invested privileged status. They pretend to be blind until they are victimized by the system of white supremacy. Then they will cry out, we must stand together and fight against oppression of all people. refusing to speak from the perspective of blackness, always got to be all inclusive. As if slavery and all its ramifications, Jim Crow segregation, is white supremacy, still not active and evident in European societies presently. Example, who remember George Floyd and Sandra Bland? Need I go through their extensive list of brutality against I and I? Should the family seek redress, Mr. Sowell's terminology would be race hustle and victimology. What caused the likes of Mr. Sowell to diminish and dismiss the pain of I and I struggle as pondering race hustle, victimology? Fear and denial is the way of slaves, making rationals like how Mr. Sowell do for his masters is in reality a coping mechanism called Stockholm Syndrome, meaning identify with your abuser / oppressor. Mr. Sowell can only lead sheep, not lions. When I speak Rastafari, it's about unlocking the minds of the young lion and lioness, them with knowledge of self, so that they can see and discern deceptive traitorous spirit like Mr. Sowell. He is shrouded in black skin, but his soul is white. Rastafari position on reparation is this. Reparation is a must. However, I will not negotiate from a position of weakness. Weakness is I am African, I am Caribbean, I am South and Central American, I am African American, etc., etc. Not until I become one, without borders and distinction, doing away with divisive mindset, speaking and acting in one voice. When I become one, reparation and whatever else I deem will be possible. Note, I is not looking for a black messiah. I is aiming for collective responsibility, collective security. They, meaning they touch one, they touch all. Yes, ones and ones. Know that Rastafari is yours. None can take it because it was never given. They never gave it to you. Rastafari is for the realignment and reconnection of the diaspora and the continental and nation African family, Caribbean African unity. One God, Jah Rastafari, one aim, organized and centralized, one destiny, repatriation. Rastafari is from your divine blackness, in the person of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I and I Divine Mother Empress Mene. One God in duality, continuous creation, I the children. Jah Rastafari without apology. Yes, ones and ones. And this I seal it up, you know. And that's just I counter narrative in relation to the intellectual juggernaut called Thomas Sowell. Once again, give thanks for lending I on the ears so I can articulate Rastafari. And thanks for the time and patience. Blessings.